What's up, everybody? Welcome back to the stream. Oh, I don't have my music on. Let's get that going. Let's get a soundtrack on this. It's Tuesday. We're getting tactical, everybody. Hope everyone's had a good week. It's been an exciting weekend for Warhammer 40,000's. WTC obviously was this week, which meant last week we had a ton of games get put in from the Warmaster GT. That's the WTC singles event, which is basically a super major level event. It is 300 players. Yeah, so big super major level event. So some of the biggest events of the year this weekend, and so we have a lot to talk about, which is great. So I'm psyched to discuss it. Now, we have some interesting results. So I think there's some big shakeups within the metagame. This is going to be kind of the Space Marine show. Last week we talked about Space Marines making this huge comeback. You know, vanilla Space Marines doing okay. Death Watch being one of the stronger factions in the game right now, and certainly the stronger like non-GSC, non-Eldari faction. And we've also seen GSC themselves take a huge nosedive. I think events have started to adopt their new nerfs, and people have started to be able to react to GSC. Like, it turns out, if you run this huge ski list, it's only infantry, and people start to build against it, you actually just get nuked. So GSC is still doing okay, but not as well as they did previously. Now, there are going to be some silly results this week because Eldar still be an Eldar. So that's going to be the most part. We're going to be skipping over a lot of boring Eldar lists at the top of events for the next couple of days. But lots of Space Marines, lots of Chaos Space Marines, we got a little Adeptus Mechanicus action for you, some Astra Militarum. It's exciting stuff, I think, honestly. And especially if you're a Space Marine fanboy, then you'll probably be happy about this, the list we are talking about this week. So, thanks everyone for coming and joining. I was a little bit late on the uptake this one. I just totally forgot to put the listing live until a couple of minutes before the stream went live. Usually I do it on Monday or Tuesday morning, but I was doing other stuff. So yeah, we'll jump in. If you are interested as well, almost immediately after the show, maybe you give me a little while to set it up. I do have a T5S2 pod game that I'm going to be live streaming over on the Purple channel. So if you want to come watch some 40k get played, I'm probably going to be getting my teeth kicked in by Eldar, but that's how that goes. Then we'll be over the Purple channel right after the stream. So that should be fun. I hope you guys come and hang out with me. And otherwise, I think let's just like freaking jump into this stuff. So we're on the Warmaster GT right now and taking a look at some of the results. And like I said, I mean, things are pretty silly, right? Eldar 1, 2, 3. We get some more interesting stuff in the XO1 category down here that didn't make the top 8 cut, or the top 4 cut. But again, more Eldar as we move things down, so. Boring. Get good, all these people. Stop crushing on Eldar for singles events. But we do have a little bit of Space Marines to talk about. Annis Wilson from Team Scotland and over from StatCheck, the StatCheck group, did come in 5th place, missed the top cut by a little bit. Unfortunately, it got 19-1 in this final round here, which is unfortunate for him. But it did make it to the top, and again, we are playing Dark Angels today, chat. So I talked a little bit about Dark Angels and basically the list that we're seeing being played right now in the best list in 40k video that I uploaded yesterday. So if you watch that video, it talked about the Polish lists from the WTC. The number one faction, the number one team in the WTC for 2023 went 7-0-1, which is an absolutely nuts record, only drawing to Team America. But they played a very similar list to this one. So let's talk about it. It's a Terminator Captain. The Polish list had an Ancient, but we're not running the Ancient today. Terminator Captain with Adeptus the Codex. So he can flip back into the Tactical Doctrine, I believe. Now, we are in Gladius Task Force. So I think one thing to be expecting is that outside of some very specific circumstances, if you are running a non-compliant chapter, you're often running them in Gladius Task Force. And I know there's going to be people who aren't happy about that. It is totally legal, and it does give you access to the chapter-specific units, but obviously you're not using the detachment abilities. And I think that's sort of how a lot of these things go. I don't know why this is called Death Watch, by the way. He calls this list Death Watch, but then plays Dark Angels. That is what it is. So it's a Terminator captain with Adeptus of the Codex. He's a Librarian in Phobos armor. I think this is one of the best character data sheets in the Space Marine Codex. If you haven't played one of these guys and you're playing Space Marines, it's so good. This dude is so insane. Just having an untargetable unit that Omni scrambles is like in some matchups just wins you the game immediately. You just like windmill slam it on the table, your opponent has nothing, like can't deal with it, and they just die. This dude's super sick. Primaris Sakat, Apothecary, Bolter Discipline. So he's going to be attaching to a Desolation Squad. So we saw the slot of the Desolation Squad taken up by aggressors in the Polish list. So the Polish list played a super duper aggressive list with a ton of heavy infantry, and this list is playing a little bit more of a classic Space Marine build. Now, it is different because it's a singles event, so the Polish WTC list had Astra Militarum in their roster, so they already had a really powerful indirect army. I guess they probably decided that they needed some more fight against, like, really heavy midline, like mid-board armies, like Necrons or Custodes maybe, that are less worried about Desolation Squads, but do have a little bit of trouble dealing with these Deathwing Knights. And I think that could have been part of the question, but obviously the Desolation Squad is so useful in so many situations that you almost might as well take it, right? This guy's so good. So a Primaris Apothecary attaches into the Desolation Squad, gives them all of the exploding 5s and 4s and stuff. We then have the Deathwing Knights. They're going to get attached to the Terminator Captain, so they get charge rerolls, and then they get free strats. So you can Armor of Contempt to them, and they go to an effective 1+ save, 0+ in cover, with -1 damage and 4 wounds a model. Good luck, I guess. And then a once per game 4+ feel no pain against mortal wounds. So even if you devastating wounds yourself through that unit, they can still just pop their Watcher in the Dark, summon him to protect them, and potentially bounce like a Wraith Knight or something. This unit's super dumb, hard to kill. It goes absolutely bonkers in Gladius Task Force, because it has all of the stratagems to protect it. So again, it has Fight on Death, it has Armor of Contempt, it also has Honor the Chapter, so they can get Lance, so +1 to wound and +1 AP. They are like mid-strength, low AP melee weapons, but they're high damage, so the only downsides are that wound roll, that annoying wound roll, and that annoying, like, kind of mad AP. But you can get them to AP2, Strength 6 with +1 to wound, so they wound most of the game on 4s, some stuff on 5s. You can get through that with Oath of Moment, puts everything on a 5+ or a 4+ save, and then 3 damage a pop, just clears them out. So they're like really good against enemy heavy infantry. They have a billion attacks, like hitting on 2s, wounding on 2s or 3s for a bunch of damage. They can punch vehicles real hard, and they have enough attacks at a big 10-man unit that they can even clear infantry as well. So yeah, just a sweet big brick of dudes. We get the Desolation Squad. We have double Inceptor squads. Love to see them with Plasma Exterminators. Super strong units. 2 Infiltrator squads. Again, one of those gets the Phobos Librarian, so it's untargetable. A Landspeeder Tornado, 1 Repulsor. So the Repulsor is actually a little bit of interesting technology because it can hold the Desolation Squad on turn 1. So if you play against enemy artillery, like, you're in the Space Marine mirror match, or they're playing Eldar with a bunch of Night Spinners, or they're playing Astra Militarum, who also could just pick up all of those Marines, and then you feel bad about yourself. They could just start in the Repulsor. Your opponent probably can't indirect fire the Repulsor to death because it's T12 and it's a billion wounds. And then you just disembark. You don't get the count as remaining stationary buff, so you don't ignore cover or ignore the indirect penalty, but at least you survived, and then you get to shoot. And then you can just slam down Armor of Contempt and try to keep those guys safe as long as possible. Because they have a Primaris Apothecary attached to the unit, they have like a little bit of resilience to like plink damage. So if your opponent has like 2 Night Spinners or something, they'll kill like 2 or 3 Marines maybe, and then 1 comes back every turn. So the Desolation Squad's not even that easy to attrition down. It like usually wins those firefights. But with the Repulsor in the list, it's super tough to interact with turn 1. And then we have 3 Scout Sniper squads for forward deploy, or excuse me, 2 Scout Sniper squads, 1 Scout Squad for forward deploy, and to be untargetable. The regular Scout Squad, I think, is also slept on in Space Marines, too. I've been playing these guys recently, and they are super good. They have both Infiltrate and Scout, so they can deploy very far forward to try to prevent enemy infiltrators from getting, like, the best drops. And then, after the roll to go first, that infiltrators, start up obviously during the deployment step. After the roll to go first, you then scout move. So if you've screened out their infiltrators, but they'll shoot you, you just pull them back behind cover. Or if they are trying to maneuver and get a charge or something, you can try to block the charge with terrain. The regular scout squad's super good. It also, we didn't take them in this one, but they can equip combat shotguns. So they get assault as well, so they can advance and perform actions. And they get a heavy weapon and a special melee weapon on the scout sergeant. So he's rocking a combi weapon and a thunder hammer, plus they have a missile launcher in the squad. So for 70 points, you also get pretty reasonable damage output, and they're fast if they need to perform actions. This unit's actually cracked. It doesn't have the untargetability effect that the scout snipers have, so they aren't quite as flashy. People aren't as excited about them, but they are super duper strong. Armor of Contempt so good in the addition of low AP. Yeah, Armor of Contempt is definitely the standout stratagem in Gladius Task Force. Especially being able to double up on it with if you have Rites of Battle or get it for free. That's like the windmill slant Vecht if you're playing against Space Marines. Adaptive Strategy is the other one, the strat to put a unit in a different doctrine so you can turn on the Desolation Squads combos because they get an additional critical hit on 5-ups if they are in Devastator Doctrine. So flipping them to Devastator turns on their Bolter Discipline. So that's a good one too, but Armor of Contempt, they're probably using 1 to 2 times per battle round a lot of times. So that one is unless you have a very specific plan, that's always the one I would CP tax, generally speaking. Yeah, Gilliman also makes it kind of crazy too. Gilliman's so good, dude. The funny thing I realized about Gilliman the other day is that he lets you grenade twice out of 2 different units. So you can actually dump a bunch of 6 mortal wounds onto something if you need to with his free stratagem, which is very funny. I didn't consider that before. Yeah, so I wouldn't be surprised that we start seeing these Deathwing Knight builds start to come out of the woodwork for Space Marines now that the WTC has concluded. A Deathwatch is definitely sort of still the standout, I think, from the Space Marine superfaction, but Dark Angels is definitely the sleeper. And it's interesting because that was when, having been playing Space Marines for the last couple of weeks, one of the things I identified is that they have no units that are really good at pushing. Deathwatch can take, the Deathwatch Veterans, which are good. They have a good rapid-fire range weapon in their frag cannons, and they're also good in melee because of the Deathwatch Thunderhammers, which are old profile Thunderhammers, AP 3 damage. But the problem is that they're so squishy. They're just a bunch of 2-wound infantry, and that unit will just die just randomly. Whereas the Deathwing Knights are very much the opposite, and they're super lethal in combat. Plus, if you're playing Gladius Task Force, you can advance and charge with them, which you can't... you can do very situationally in Deathwatch. You can do it with the Watchmaster, but not the other guys. So, I think this is kind of this was the missing piece of the Space Marine puzzle, where you're well, we need a unit that could go and fight, and it's not really aggressors, because they're kind of squishy. It's not really, assault Terminators, because they're, largely not that good. And it might just be Deathwing Knights. What's up, kitty cat? Inky wants to come say hi, because she wants to be on the stream. You want to come visit? Come say hi to the stream. They're here to see you, really. I'm just set dressing. Yeah? Just a pretty face, and Inky's the star of the show. Oh, here she is. Oh, where are you going? Oh. She wants to go in her castle. All right, maybe later. All right, chat. So that's fun. Dark Angel's really kind of tearing it up right now. Now, we also saw some Deathwatch in the top here, and we've talked about these guys at length, so I guess we can do a real quick rundown of Space Marines here, but we'll probably not spend too long on it. This one's bringing a Primaris Captain and a Tome of the Ectocleids Watchmaster, big Desolation Squad. The cool thing about the Deathwatch Desolation Squad is because they don't have access to Bolter Discipline, they don't actually need a character attached. So they're kind of a little bit cheaper. Double Inceptor squads, double Infiltrator squads, 1 Proteus kill team, and then another Proteus kill team, big Stern Guard veteran squad, and a Hail Strike. So the Hail Strike's the +1 AP. Yeah, the +1 AP guy, the +1 AP Storm Speeder, which is good because we're putting a lot of work, putting a lot of stock into the frag cannons, which are only AP1 if I remember correctly. So the Hail Strike being able to buff those guys up is pretty sweet. Plus, you can then use, I think you can stack that with an additional +1 AP from is it Vengeance rounds, the stratagem that gives an additional AP and extra range, if I remember correctly. I might just be talking about boat with that one, but one of the special ammunition stratagems gives them extra additional AP, so you can get them to 3, which is pretty good in some situations if you kind of commit everything. And then I like the Sternguard veterans just as a mortal wound output. I think these guys are probably underplayed. I did actually play against them in a tournament a couple weeks ago, and they were just playing 5s, and I was really impressed just from being able to sequence your attacks, especially if you have like indirect fire like Desolators. You can sequence them to the point where they get units low, and then they can shoot them, kill it, and trigger Bolter Discipline and immediately shoot again once per game. And the amount of output from the big Sternguard veteran squad is pretty crazy. Getting a double tap out of these guys, if they're in rapid fire range, they shoot 3 times per guy with the regular bolt rifle, and then also they have heavy bolters, and all of that has devastating wounds. So if you like Tome of the Ectoclades, oath 2 things, then the Sternguard veterans can shoot one, fill it with mortal wounds, and kill it. Bolter Discipline, shoot the other one, and like shoot a billion mortal wounds into that one too. So if you sequence it like towards the middle of your shooting phase, these guys actually do like sort of insane work, which is kind of fun. Plus, it's a cool unit. I like the regular bolter guys. I don't know about you, chat. I think Space Marines have for a long time been like the special weapons squad army, where it's all about like guys with grav cannons and melty meltas and stuff. And it's always felt sad because all of the artwork is like the regular bolter Marines, which are, in my opinion, the coolest. And Sternguard veterans are just the platonic ideal of a regular bolter squad, and I think that's super cool. So, impressed by those dudes. It is Kraken rounds, chat. All right, sweet. They also make Eradicators delete a Wraith Knight. Yeah, they go to AP 5. Let's go. Just hope it doesn't have fortune on it, so they went on 6s. So they're just like fishing really hard. All right. Now I think there's some other, before we move off Space Marines, and largely so I can put this in a timestamp on this live stream, we have some other Space Marines to talk about. In the Golden Ticket event, so this was won by Mikey over from Hellstorm Wargaming. I know he's very chuffed about it, which is he should be, because going 6-0 in a GT is a big deal. He played Deathwatch, I believe, which is, that's good. We just talked about Deathwatch, but there they are. It's Deathwatch. Good stuff. But we also had, look at these little friends right here, chat. Space Wolves also came in 3rd. 5-1 at that event, at 3rd place. So Matthew McCurdy over here. Playing Space Wolves in a Gladius Task Force, and this is a sweet Space Wolves list. So, yeah, we're running a bunch of real classic Space Wolf stuff. A big Thunderwolf Cavalry brick. Yeah, I guess it's not that big, but it does have all of the little friends in it. So, we're taking Bjorn the Fell-Handed and the Calidus Assassin. So here's the Calidus Assassin. So we get double Vects, double CP taxes. Bjorn can target one thing, and then the Calidus Assassin can target something else. Or if your opponent has, like, Phantasm, they're like, all right, turn 1, I'll Phantasm, and you're like, I'll Vect it twice, thank you. It's now 3 CP, and they can basically never do it again unless that's literally all of their command points for an entire battle round. And that's, pretty strong, pretty solid. That's one of the big benefits you get for playing Space Wolves. We also have an Iron Priest, who's just a Tech Marine who gets the Hellfrost gun. But he's taking Bolter Discipline. Does he have Bolter Discipline to attach into a Servitor squad? That's a move. they don't, do they attach to anything besides Servitors? I actually have no idea. That is Chad right there, and the Servitors have multi-meltas. Amazing. Let's go find my Space Wolf data sheets here. I could definitely see it where Iron Priest specifically get attached to like random other stuff because they are like special Space Wolf guys. Yeah, so the Iron Priest does attach to Long Fangs. Oh, that's sick! Oh, I didn't know that. That's super cool. All right, so we have Long Fangs in the list. I was actually curious about this. I'm glad we worked it out. So we have Longfangs in the list. They don't get a benefit from the Iron Priest, I don't believe. Yeah, because he just buffs vehicles still. But he does give them Bolter Discipline. So once they're in Devastator Doctrine, they can advance and shoot, and then critical hit on 5s with 5 multi-meltas and a melta-gun. So if you get them up close and personal, they're shooting 11 times. Seems good with the Longfang. That's sick. And then exploding on 5s, probably with Oath. Nice. That is classy right there, chat. That is super classy. We then have a Wolfguard Battle Leader on Thunderwolf plus a Wolf Lord on Thunderwolf. The Wolfguard Battle Leader is he's a surprising guy. The Wolf Lord, I believe, just gives them reroll charges because he is a captain. He is this guy. So we can take a look at the data sheets here, chat. I do have them. Yeah. Oh, he gets +1 to advance and charge, excuse me. So that is effectively +2 inches of threat because in Gladius Task Force, obviously, you can put them into advance and charge all the time. And then they get a free stratagem. The Thunderwolf Battle Leader, though, we saw him played to much acclaim in the T5SU Invitational. So if you missed the Thunderwolf Battle Leader, the Wolfguard Battle Leader games, I feel sorry for you, but you definitely will... you will learn very quickly what a Wolfguard Battle Leader does after you watch those games. The biggest thing is this huge brick of text right here. After your opponent has finished making attacks against the Wolfguard Battle Leader's Thunderwolf unit, regardless of whether or not they hit or wounded or you lost any models, all they have to do is target you. You can then trigger that ability to move d6 inches directly towards the closest enemy unit. So it doesn't have to be the unit attacking. So you can get shot from like way somewhere, like way off the side, and then just directly go towards the. If you're close to something in the middle, just go directly towards the thing in the middle. It is a little bit restrictive because it's as close as possible. So you can't like really use it to like hide behind terrain or whatever. But you can put yourself in a situation where like the Wolfguard come off the side, or they're threatening like a very specific part, and your opponent only has 1 or 2 things to attack you, especially if you rapid ingress. Then they can shoot you with 1 thing, and you can use that for an additional d6 inches, then move 10, plus an advance, +1 on the advance, then a charge, +1 on the charge, if you put them into Assault Doctrine. So they go super fast, and then they hit relatively hard as well. So the Wolfguard Battle Leader himself, I mean, he's no slouch, right? He's going to be getting... he probably has the Thunder Hammer, I think. Yeah, so we get 2 dudes with Thunder Hammers in that unit. And the Wolfguard are basically a delivery system for these 2 units because they are lethal once they get in there. So, very cool. This list is very classy, by the way, chat. We do have Ragnar Blackmane, who is, I think, basically an absolute Chad of a character right now. Let's pull his data sheet up real quick here. Yep, here he is. So he used to be the funniest thing in 8th edition. If you remember back in the day when, what was this? Where it was, I don't know. It was the box with him and Gaskell that came out. Basically, every single Imperium game had a Ragnar Blackmane in it. And if it was a mirror match, you just had 2 Ragnar Blackmanes fighting each other all the time. They never actually attacked each other. They always hit somebody else, but it was still pretty good. So Ragnar Blackmane himself has an 8 attack. His big cool chainsword is an 8 attack sustain 1 AP 3 2 damage melee weapon. He gets +2 attacks and strength on the charge. So he himself goes to 10 attacks, sustain 1 at strength 8. You can honor the chapter, so he goes to AP 4 with +1 to wound, so he's wounding everything on 4s. Potentially Oath of Moment in there. And then he gets permanent advance in charge, and he can add that to this Blade Guard veteran squad that he's also most likely going to be charging. So he himself is like an absolute... He doesn't have to be leading a unit to get his extra attack for charging. So... the unit's like a delivery system for this guy because he has so many attacks at such high AP and damage or strength that he'll clear like light or medium to heavy infantry. He just destroys utterly. He's like even good at hitting vehicles if you honor the chapter on him. The Blade Guard veterans themselves are not they're no slouches. They're not what they used to be for sure. They're not the greatest thing ever, but they are also pretty good. And he's just a super duper strong combat character. The downside is he's really squishy once he gets there. He's only like T4. He's got 5 wounds, I guess, with the 4+ invuln, but it's just a captain profile. But he is an absolute blender of a character. 2 little tiny Desolation squads in here, an Infiltrator squad, the Long Fangs we talked about, a Repulsor, I think mostly to deliver the Blade Guard veterans. What we could potentially do is actually start the Desolation squads in the Repulsor so they can't be counter-batteried, and then immediately on turn 1 you disembark the Desolators to shoot, and then you embark the Blade Guard veterans and then move the Repulsor. So you can put the Repulsor into the center, but still have the Desolators immune to attacks in the first turn. And then Thunderwolf Cavalry taking up a flank. This list is super classy, chat. I love it. It's so good. Convinced that Scouts, Company Command, and a bunch of units that were legended out of nowhere were given good rolls of people bought kits. That feels tinfoil hatty. Because, like, Desolation squads were also given good rules, and they don't even have kits. I think a lot of the... Sometimes it definitely feels like there's like a marriage between, marketing and design, right? Where they're like, well, we made a new unit and it's super busted, so everyone's going to buy it. But I think the amount of times that also doesn't happen puts if you were to perform a statistical analysis on it, I think you would not be able to rule out that just being random coincidence. Because there are very, very, very good units that either are existent or are new or also are even harder to buy and not being legended. So I think, I don't know. I don't think that's entirely... I mean, it could possibly for sure be true, but I don't think it's likely, honestly. All right, cool. So we talked a little bit about some Space Marines. I think that's all the Space Marines we have to talk about, but we do have some other spicy factions we can hop into. Lots of Astra Militarum, a little bit of Adeptus Mechanicus, some Drukhari even. So what do people want to see next? Go ahead and throw them in there. Local meta is all Space Marines. You would have collected them a while ago. Yeah. Yeah, that is the downside of playing Space Marines, is oftentimes you just play against a lot of Space Marines. I mean, I went to like a random tournament the other day. I played Space Marines twice. 2 Ultramarines players, like almost back to back. Pretty kind of crazy. It's not even like Ultramarines are like, super meta right now. If it was Deathwatch, I'd understand, because a lot of people are talking about Deathwatch and playing them, but not even Deathwatch. I need a Black Adder model. Vashtor convince you that they're just randomly throwing darts? Yeah, I think so. Vashtor is the tragedy of recent releases for sure. They're like, guys, we're introducing this cool new character to the narrative with this like incredible, like huge model. It's like super weird and chaosy, and everyone's like, whoa, crazy. And then they're like, and we're gonna give them the most dog shit rules in 2 editions back to back. You're like, what are you doing, guys? Sometimes I do think that the models that are like aesthetically very cool, I think that they give a lot of free reign to their like concept team, where they're just like, all right, draw stuff, and they're like, okay, here's a Space Marine with a missile launcher gun with 2 missile launchers on it, and they're like, sure, whatever, print it, and then they go through all the time like sculpting it, and it becomes a Desolator, and then somebody like there's like a focus group test at the end where they put a bunch of like toddlers in a room and are like, do you like the Space Marine Desolation Squad? And the toddlers all like cry and throw it at walls and like fall asleep, and this like focus group testing team is like, oh no, guys. The Desolators look really bad. We'll give them really, really good rules so that people actually buy them. I think that's, if I was to conspiracy theorize, that would be mine. Because it often happens that the models that come out that look really sick are just awful. and the models that look really dumb are really good, which is why 40k often gets, like, I don't know. Maybe it's made fun of by Age of Sigmar players for really like lame on the table, but... Drukhari. All right. Leagues of Votann. I don't know if we have much to say on Leagues of Votann here, chat. Unfortunately. All right, a couple of people asked for Tau. We could take a look for Tau. I didn't have any Tau picked out off the top of my head here, but we can take a quick gander down the X and ones for some Tau. I wouldn't be too shocked if we found some. Here we go. Jason McKenzie over here from Xenos Petting Zoo. Play Tau Empire. This is the Hammer of Wrath GT. This one's relatively small. I guess not that small. 46 players is kind of big. But he went 3-0-1, which is fine. That's a solid result. As good as Daniel Olivas with Eldar. How do you get that result with Eldar? Do you just play a bunch of mirror matches by accident? Eldar as good as Tau. You heard it here first, chat. Now, I think that, to be fair... Oh, my God. Are we... All right. I was going to say, I think that we should expect to see a lot of, like, Cold Star commanders in Crisis Battlesuit teams. I think that's sort of coming out, like, where Tau end up. But now that I am reading the title of this list, I think that we might be in for something a little bit spicier. So, we have a Cold Star commander with Exemplar of the Kauyan, so he gets exploding hits earlier. That's pretty standard. An Ethereal with Through Unity Devastation. So his joined unit can spot for people to give them lethal hits. That's a big deal if you combine the Cold Star Commander Exemplar unit with a Tetras. Because, or I guess you can't do it on Tetras. But you can do it... I guess you can't do it. All right, I guess that I've talked myself out of the combo. If you can give them rerolls, the Exemplar of the Kauyan lets you fish for the Tesla hits, the sustained 2 hits on the from the Kauyan ability. But you can't attach an Ethereal to somebody who gives you full rerolls to hit to give them Through Unity Devastation. So that's a little bit sad. And then we do have a Firesight team. Precision of the Patient Hunter, so he gets +1 to hit and wound, and that's actually kind of spicy on that guy. I like that. So he gets, I think, weapons, ballistic skill 4 on the pulse rifles. And there's like strength 5, AP 2 damage, if I remember correctly. And then they have precision, so you can shoot characters out really easily, because if you are precise and get guided, you're +2 to hit, right? So you go down to hitting on 2s. And then when the Firesight team itself gets guided, it gets reroll 1s to hit. So it hits on 2s, reroll 1s, potentially with Tesla and or lethal maybe. And then the pulse rifles, you could just pick out the characters out of a unit. That's actually super duper spicy. I like that a lot. So there's a strike team for the Ethereal to join into, which is notably not a Tesla unit or Tetra unit, just so we're on the same page. You can't join the Ethereal to Tetras. I've just discovered in my own brain. A single broadside battlesuit. I like the singleton broadsides, honestly, chat. They're not very good to guide, but they can guide 4 people. And they're for 110 points and 10 wounds. They're kind of difficult to kill, and you can just like use them as these little lone operatives who wander around. They're not actually lone operatives, but like single entity units. Crisis battlesuits, yeah. So we got a big crisis battlesuit unit with a bunch of plasma rifles and cyclic ion blasters to be the beneficiary of all of these buffs. 3 units of crude hounds for turn 1. Secondaries, 3 piranhas because they're really good. Yeah, running burst cannons on these ones, not fusion blasters, interestingly, but gives you a little bit more infantry sweeping, which can be a problem if you are running Taunar Supremacy armor. So the Taunar is, let's take a quick look at his data sheet right now. I hope I have it installed, actually. I might have to go digging for it, because I don't know if I have it downloaded. I definitely don't. Maybe I do. We did it. We found it. Life finds a way. So he is running Pulse ordnance drivers. That's interesting. I guess that, well, that's pretty good against, like, heavy infantry bricks, right? So if you're worried about, like, Necrons or Custodes, or even Space Marines, right? This kind of, like, nukes them super hard. The problem is AP1, I think. So you're bumping up into 2+ saves a lot of times. Especially if they're, like, Terminators in cover, then you don't even... Well, I guess you get ignore cover from marker lights. So as long as you get buffed by a marker light unit, they're not heavy, so you're hitting on 3s. You can get rerolls from a Tetra, I guess. And then you're shooting 24 shots at Strength 5, AP 1, 3 damage for Anti-Infantry 2. It's alright. The most exciting thing to take, obviously, is the rail cannon arrays, right? Because it's strength 26, 16 damage, just for like shooting knights and stuff. But I think that the threat of knights is much less. And now that with this build, like the Taunar could just potentially shoot to death everyone who's capable of scoring your opponent points, basically. The issue with the Taunar, this is kind of the perennial problem with him, is that first of all, he gets rerolls if he attacks the spotted units, but a lot of times you're going to spot him with Tetras anyway, so it doesn't do anything. This is like a blank ability for the most part. But the other thing is that it has so many guns, it can't really split fire effectively, because if you're guided, you get -1 ballistic skill on your non-spot units. So, what's up, Kitty? So he doesn't have like the same effect where he could just go in and like just blanket out shots everywhere, because he does have a ton of weapon systems, insane number of weapon systems, because it gets the smart missile systems and the burst cannons, and then also the ordnance drivers and the 2 triaxis ion cannons. But I guess in that situation, you just won't guide it. You just roll 4s and hope for the best. Seems fine, I guess. You do, if you are benefiting from Callion, you get sustained 1 base. So you're mathematically basically hitting on 3s at that point. So it's not that bad. And then you just go in and try to kill like every like utility unit your opponent has, so they can never score. And if they have a big infantry brick, he just shoots it all to death with a ridiculous number of 3 damage shots. It has on average 37 3 damage attacks. Wow. I'm slowly coming around with this pulse ordnance driver. Anti-infantry 2 is a hell of a drug for sure. Heavy rail cannon with Bane Blades on 2s? Yeah. I think the issue with the heavy rail cannon is that it still bumps up in invulnerable saves, right? So it wounds that Bane Blade on 2s, but if that Bane Blade is protected by a Tech Priest engines here, it actually like doesn't take any damage probably. It like rolls 2 saves, like passes 1, fails 1, CP rolls the fail into a success, and then you're just like, wow, okay. You were supposed to be dead, but instead it was fine. But I mean, you could get lucky, roll a bunch of 6s, like who knows, and devastate them. But I don't know. I don't know, chat. I can use the coordinated, yeah, coordinate to engage. No. I don't think that's the one we're talking about. Yeah, I don't know. I don't think that there's a... oh, there's Point Blank Ambush, which I think is the one to give it +1 AP. But you have to be within 9 inches of the target. Which is certainly possible, but not easy. You could also only use it on round 3 on. Which, to be fair, I guess is the only time you would use it. So, I guess you can pump it to AP too. Yeah, we have AdMech to talk about. There's undefeated AdMech this week, chat. We're talking about AdMech. Don't worry. This Tau was just the one that was voted for first, so we're starting with Tau. But we've got AdMech coming. Need a tech priest in your guard list? I mean, I don't know if I would particularly tech for the Taunar Supremacy armor matchup, to be fair. Although if you're running a Baneblade, it's a good idea to run a tech priest and or a Trojan support vehicle in your list so that they can swap off buffing it, whichever one you need at the time. All right, Town Supremacy Armor. You're kind of coming around for me. I mean, like, let's be real, right? Tau have really good support units. They have Crude Hounds, they have Vespid Swingwings, and they have Piranhas. They're all super fast. They can, the Crude Hounds forward operate because they have Scout, the Vespid Swingwings deep Strike, and then redeploy themselves. And then the Piranhas are just like 14-inch move, just zip around the table. So you're not in, like, great need of scoring. Tau can be a little bit squishy, so having a big unit that doesn't die to a single, like, shooting step is kind of a big deal. Can they... It isn't actually battlesuit keyworded, right? So it can't stim inject? No. Sad. That'd be cool. You get a 6+ field pain on 30 wounds. It's just an Imperial Knight at that point. It's like a Porphyrian. But yeah, I can certainly see the appeal. 790 points is a lot, though. I think at its previous points value, which was a little bit less, it was like 650, right? I think that the 10 Supremacy Armor was legitimately an actually very good pick. I think 790, it starts to get out of the realm of goodness, but it also depends on your terrain. If it has really favorable terrain, it can shoot the entire table on turn 1, then I don't know, go for it. Who cares? Pretty cool. Congratulations, Jason McKenzie. That's a fun list. All right. I'll do a quick scan for more Tau before we get it. Here's a 3-2. 3-2 Tau list to talk about. And I don't really see much Tau at War Master. Blood Angels. All right. Let's talk about this one. This one was 3-2. Yeah, this is, I think, a little bit more standard. This is what I would expect to see if we weren't running Supremacy Armor. So this is 3-2. Takes Aunva, Exemplar of the Kalyan, Cold Star Commander, Pure Tide Engram, Cold Star Commander, and a Precision of the Painted Hunter, Cold Star Commander. Or this is a Crisis Commander, excuse me. And then 1, 2, 3 units of Crisis Battlesuits. 4 units of Crisis Battlesuits. Let's go. Are they Battle Line? Oh, no, sorry. It's a Broadside. There's one Broadside. And then 3 units of Crisis. Yeah, 2 small, 1 big, a bunch of Piranhas, a bunch of Tetras. Yeah, that's sort of standard. No utility units in this one. A little bit light on Vespid and stuff like that, but normally relatively standard. You're just going to be like giving a billion rerolls to a Crisis Battlesuit unit and then using them to reroll into Tesla hits, into Sustain Hit 2, and like shredding someone with Cyclic Ion Blaster shots and hoping for the best, which is pretty good. I don't know. I think we've talked about this list enough that it's not super surprising anymore. All right. What else did people ask for up top here? The next one was Drukhari. All right, we'll talk about Drukhari because we have an X1 Drukhari from this event. So Robert Kimpton over here playing Drukhari. An honest-to-God real Space Raider chat. We didn't put in Drukhari and then play Inari like a jerk. We are running an Art of Pain Archon, big brick of Kabalite Warriors, 2 bricks of Kabalite Warriors, 3 bricks of Kabalite Warriors. I wonder if we're seeing Venom spam today, chat. So 3 big units of Kabalites, 2 little units of Rax. Yeah, 3 Raiders, 2 Venoms. So the Venoms, you can use to split the Kabalites off if you want to. So you could put the Archon in one of them, so he gives them full rerolls to hit and wound with pain tokens. And then the Kabalite Warriors can split into... You could even put 1 Raider with all of the heavy weapons, so that you can concentrate all of your pain token usage. So you get the Dark Lance out of the heavy weapon, out of the Raider itself, 2 Dark Lances out of the unit, plus the blasters and shredders. So all of that gets hit rerolls for 1 CP if they're shooting at the firing deck on the Raider. And then you can unlock that because you can put the 2 5-mans just with Splinter Rifles in the Venoms, which just then combat squads them into 2 units of 5. And then those are really good for utility. You could just like run Venoms out, disembark the unit, do actions and stuff. 2 Chronos to regenerate pain tokens, 2 Mandrakes as just forward operators. Triple Ravager, as is expected, plus Reavers, because they're fast and mount Heat Lances, yep, and do mortal wounds, all good stuff. Big unit of Scourges with 4 Dark Lances. Yeah, it's triple Scourges with 4 Dark Lances. 1 unit with Haywire Blasters for anti-vehicle devastating wounds. And I think altogether, pretty standard stuff. I like this list, actually. I think the transport, like, makeup of Drukhari is still, in my opinion, kind of up in the air. A lot of people, like, some people leave transports at home and take Talus instead. But some people, like, rock the heavy weapon Cabalite Warrior units. I wish that there was a more efficient unit. Like, I wish Cabalite Warriors could take 2 heavy weapons. Like, maybe they can swap their blaster for a Dark Lance or something. And then you could like, do these, like, build your own Ravagers, right? Where you just take Cabalite Warriors, you combat squad them with Venoms, you put the big units into the Raiders, and the Raiders are suddenly, like, these heavy weapon caddies, where they just have a billion heavy weapons on them, and then you can reroll them, and then the little units are good for other stuff. But, I mean, I guess having 3 Dark Lances and 2 Blasters in a single transport is pretty solid, so... It's better than a Ravager. It's more output than a Ravager. Let Neurotyrants join Zoanthropes? Yes, please. What is the leader ability on Neurotyrants? Like, who decided that? They're like, guys, what should... They have Tyrant in the name, so I guess Tyrant Guard. You're like, not all the Thropes. It's just a Zoanthrope. You're not letting it join Zoanthropes? You're like, nah, whatever. What should it do for its unit? Well, it joins Neurogons, and they're only weapon scale 4, so it should give +1 to hit. You're like, what? What are you talking about? Ridiculous. I'm hoping for the Codex that they make Neurotyrants, like, more palatable, honestly. I think that, man, they're, like, so good on paper. I'm just so worried about taking them in addition to a Hive Tyrant. It's just like... It's like 300 points and 320 points in support characters. I'm like, ugh, that's a lot. The Hive Tyrant himself is always does feel like a little bit of an expenditure, but him and a Neurotyrant would be tough. Sometimes you just take the Neurotyrant, I guess, but the Hive Tyrant's so efficient. I don't know. Anyway, there's some Drukhari to talk about, chat. Pretty cool. I like the name of the list. Bodie McBoatface. That's good right there. That's a good name. All right, chat. I promised Mechanicus. Where did I put them? I hope I didn't misread and then note them down as Mechanicus, but they were actually Custodes. Uh-oh. Did I promise people Mechanicus and then lie to them? I hope not. There's no way. All right, there's a 3/3 Mechanicus. I'm just going to search here real quick. Put it on me, so I'll be looking at all my horrible typing. Okay, no, whew, we didn't lie. I just was at the wrong GT. All right, chat. Let's frickin' do it. We ready to talk about some frickin' Adeptus Mechanicus? So we are over here, Hammer of Wrath GT. This wasn't, this is the one we talked about earlier, 46 players. We got an X and 1 AdMech. Let's go, team. Let's go. This one's gonna take me a little bit of time because I have no idea what Adeptus Mechanicus do right now. Having barely seen them. So this is, by the way, let's shout out our player, Matthew Geyer with AdMech. Double Dominus and a Manipulus. 2 units of Skitarii Vanguard. 3 units, 4 units. 4 units of Skitarii Vanguard are on Scorpius Dune Riders. Yeah, so these guys are super good at objective control. I think that so for, 180 points, you get 10 idiots who are, like, pretty good at shooting. They're not the best in the world, but they're okay. In Scorpius Dune Riders, you can flip them to having Assault if you take the Aggressor Doctrina. So they can disembark the transport and advance to do actions, or advance to shoot if they want to. And then they reduce your objective control within 3 inches by 1. So you just, like, you plow those Dune Riders forward, disembark these units onto the objective, and they themselves are OC2. Your OC is being reduced by 1, even if there's 1 Vanguard in range of you. So all they have to do is basically have the Dune Rider within, like, I think the Dune Riders are moved 12, right? So if they're within, like, 18 inches of your unit, they can almost automatically steal an objective from you, especially if you're a multi-model unit, because that compounds the that compounds the effect of the ability. Let me pull up the Dune Rider datasheet here. The Dune Rider, kind of an inexplicable profile because it doesn't have. I don't think it has firing deck, despite the fact that it's like entirely open topped. Yeah. So here he is, this little friendly man. Yeah, so he's moved 12. So as long as you're within 12 inches plus a 3-inch disembark plus the 3-inch, I think it's 3-inch aura on the ability, then you can basically almost automatically. Oh, these are rangers. You can basically automatically. Yeah, it is 3 inches to reduce your OC. Automatically steal the objective away from whoever's standing on it. Even from, you mentioned like Adeptus Custodes. If they're Custodian Guard and they don't have the Vexillus in the unit, then they go down to OC 1. And suddenly your little dudes are like just the same weight as them. And they're just like, what's up, dude? How are you doing? And I guess this Dune Rider also, it can disembark in advance. That's cool. Or advance and disembark. So you could move up to 18 inches with the Dune Rider, then disembark the unit off. And then if you give the transport itself assault, it can still do actions and or shoot. So, okay. That's solid. And it shoots 18 times the sustain one. That's not terrible. At least like infantry clear. So that's like your frontline objective control situation. We're then running 3 individual Ballistari and 18 Cataphron Breachers. Yep, that feels like the way to go. For sure. I'll pull the Breachers up here. So they're firing like mass anti-vehicle 3 damage guns. I think the one downside is that they are kind of low strength. So they're rapid fire too, so as long as they get within 18 inches of you, they're shooting 4 times apiece. When they're near battle line units, they get full hit rerolls, and you do have 4 units of Skitarii Vanguard, so that's easy to do, relatively. If you have 1 unit, it just sort of like strings out in the back. And then you can also use the reactive fire, so they get Vengeful Fallout. If you're targeted by an enemy attack, so unlike a lot of reactive fires, you don't actually have to lose units or lose models to reactive fire. You just have to be shot. And then you get to shoot back. You retain your hit rerolls if you're still next to battle line units, as long as they haven't killed your Skitarii Vanguard. So then you potentially fire another 24. Is that right? Yeah, 6 times 4. 24, strength 8, AP2, 3 damage guns. If you have one of the Doctrinas active and they're into their deployment zone, then you get +1 AP as well. So they can potentially be going to AP3. The downside is when they start shooting into non-vehicles, but even against vehicles, it's like enough volume that they'll start to kill you. So I think that this is probably like the list if I were to assign one to Adeptus Mechanicus. There's maybe a little bit of wiggle room that you get from taking like sometimes you see raiders or like sterilizers as utility, and or you also see Imperial agents sometimes as well, just to make up the last couple points. But everything is very expensive in Adeptus Mechanicus, so you don't have a lot of wiggle room. But yeah, I mean, it's like the game plan of the list is pretty good. If you can't efficiently kill Cataphron Breachers, right, and you're focusing on vehicles and you're focusing on like 3 wound infantry, they're just gonna sock you right in the face. And you have to deal with the Cataphron Breachers after killing all of these Skitarii Vanguard that are standing in the middle of the table. And you can't hold primary if the Skitarii Vanguard don't die, because they're just super duper strong. So yeah, I mean, I think that's how to play Adeptus Mechanicus if I were to put it into a nutshell, probably. It's a pretty good build. Tongs out for Mechanicus, yeah. Codex will fix NIDs. I mean, I don't know if NIDs necessarily need fixing, right? Like, it turns out they're actually one of the better factions in the game. They're just really boring, which is like, someone's got to do it, I guess. They're just the VP printing faction, essentially. They put their farmer hats on. They just farm VP for a while, which is like it's an okay place to be, I guess. I've definitely, after playing them for a bit, like I don't know, I've grown on NIDs, but I do think that they are, I don't know, they lack in some spice, but they're very good. It's like particular units and characters that you don't really want to ever play. Guild gaming, just getting into the game. What's the meta you have to look out for? Right now, if I were to give you advice, if you're like brand new to the game, I wouldn't even worry about it, honestly. Like maybe worry about like if you have a local community and you're playing with local people, I would think about what they're playing maybe when you're constructing lists. Sort of generally like, well, I know that most of my opponents play Space Marines or play Necrons or something. Then you can build in tools to fight them, but I wouldn't worry about like the global meta if you're brand new. There's also the fact that next month we're going to see a huge balance change. A lot of this powerful stuff is going to change. So I wouldn't get too invested in like trying to counter the meta right now. But welcome to the game if you are brand new. And I hope you're enjoying yourself so far. These are good. If you are getting into one of these factions, these are good places to look to start an army, though. That's what normally I would use like the meta lists for. Rather than trying to like counter tech them, because it takes a little bit of brain power. I would use them as a jumping off point from an army and then personalize it yourself with the units that you like. Without Biovores and a weird interaction with mines, Nids would not win. I don't think that's the case. Tyranids benefit from having super duper cheap data sheets and their utility units are generally very good. So like I think Tyranid's win rate would definitely plummet without Biovores, but I don't think it would be like much less, I don't think it would like be sub 50%. Once you cut like Eldar and all that garbage out, right? Like the looking at stats right now is so fucked because like every faction just gets depressed by Eldar. Eldar's just shoving everyone into the toilet. They're just the big plunger of the universe, being like, get out of here, everybody. You're all sub 50%, and we're in the 70s. Get wrecked. But I think, yeah, if we were in a metagame that was like balanced whatsoever, and Tyranids couldn't use Biovores, I think they would be fine. They would be like really middle of the road. They're still good at scoring. Like Gargoyles are nuts. Lictors are insane. Like their utility is super strong. They just wouldn't have like the auto, like the easy button. Like I get all my secondaries every turn. This is every time I get a maneuver secondary pulled, I just automatically complete it. It's a little silly, to be fair. I actually probably, especially once like the Codex arrives, I actually don't think that the faction will need it at all. I have a sneaking suspicion they'll be fine anyway. Yeah, so Chad, I do list reviews, usually for super chats. If you super chat me, you can send me a list. You can like Discord it to me, and then I'll take a peek. All right, moving on. What else did I have picked out here? We talked about Drukhari. We talked about all of the billion Space Marines. Oh, Astra Militarum, chat. Let's talk about some Astra Militarum. I think Astra Militarum may end up as one of the underrated factions in the 10th edition metagame. I think maybe people were worried about them during the indirect nerf. Maybe people were assumed that the indirect nerf was worse than it was. But I don't know. But we'll find out, because Astra Militarum have been doing well. They had a great showing at WTC. They're a great WTC list because a lot of armies just simply do not want to fight them. If they're like, oh, I brought my Desolators, or I brought my support weapon platforms and like my little utility units, and that's what I used to win the game, we're just talking about Tyranids, right? Tyranids are like, I have 3 Biovores, and if they die, my game plan is much harder. And this Astra Militarum player is like, it's like half a shooting step. 3 Biovores is nothing. It's nothing. They're all dead. Everything's dead. So if you're relying on those like very particular little utility units to win the game, Astra Militarum are like, get out of here. You don't get any of that stuff. It's all exploded. I don't think that they have like I think that they have a wide variety of bad matchups, but I think that they probably survived the indirect fire nerfs much better than everyone assumed that they did. And myself included. I thought they were not doing too great. So yeah, starting with Gaunt's Ghosts. These guys, I feel like I have to pull up their data sheet every time I look at them. If I remember correctly, and I'm not misspeaking, they are infiltrators and scout, so that they do everything good.
I'll DM the list. Love the plunger analogy, BTW lol.
Sweet. Yeah, shoot it over. I'll just make sure, make sure that my message requests are open in case this is, you haven't DM'd me before. So here's Gonsko's data sheet right here. So they're not scout, that they are stealth. And they get cover all the time. So they're just really, really efficient forward deployers. They have a bunch of different weapons. They have a bunch of precision attacks. They have a really good sniper weapon, a 4-damage sniper rifle, which is super solid. And then also they're just like tough to kill, and they can redeploy themselves. So good utility unit, good for secondaries, good for turn 1 screens. Lord Solar, as well as a Premier Psyker to give somebody an invulnerable save, a Regimental Engine Seer to give a tank an invulnerable save. Pretty good. Ursula Creed as well. 1 unit of Death Corps of Krieg, 2 Earthshaker Carriages, 2 Manticores. We are not taking the full artillery barrage today. We're most of the way there, but not all the way in. By the way, chat, Earthshaker Carriage batteries make me so angry. This unit's very stupid. Because it's just a Basilisk, but it invalidates the Basilisk. So, like, why would you ever play a Basilisk if you could take an Earthshaker Carriage battery? I don't like that. I think that's dumb. 3 Medusa Carriage batteries. Double Rogel Dorn battle tanks. Yeah, so these guys are largely played for... I'll just grab their data sheet real quick. Just having an enormous, like, T13 body on the table. Oh, I went all the way through. We did it live, I guess. Oops, there it is. Excuse me, T12 18 wound body. It has this ablative armor mechanic. This is cool. So it zeroes out 1 damage roll or 1 attack per turn. It is when the attack is allocated. Interestingly, that means that it happens before saving throws. So it's not like, I believe the Ghost Keel, its stealth drones let you blank damage after the saving throw if they fail. Let me double check that. It's weird that those are not the same mechanic. Oh no, it's the same. It is the same mechanic. Just kidding. It just happens twice. No, yeah, it is the same. All right. So I'm just talking out my butt, apparently. So that's super interesting. I actually didn't realize that those happened after or before the roll. I thought it was like the Thousand Sun stratagem. So that also an interesting piece of technology about these is that these also don't affect Melta characteristics. So if you have a Melta weapon, because characteristic replacements happen before additions, if you have like a +1 or +2 damage bonus, the ablative plating will kick in, turn the base damage to 0, then the Melta will, or whatever damage bonus you have, will add on top of that. So if you hit this guy with a Melta, like a Thermal Lance or something, he can 0 damage it, and then we'll take like 4 or 6, depending on what the Melta characteristic is, if you're in Melta range, which is kind of strange, if he fails the save. But that still means that the save is relevant. But generally speaking, you're going to use it on like a big, huge cannon shot or something. Like you get shot by a railgun, you're just like, no, I don't want to take that. Which is cool. And it's cool that you can choose when it happens. In past editions, that would have been the first damage roll. Or the first attack, and that would have been garbage because you like plink it with a bolt pistol or something. Yeah, but generally, I mean, like, just huge attack numbers. Lots of attacks. You get +1 to hit with Lord Solar Leontis because he can order whatever he wants. And then they're, like, ridiculously tough to kill. So it seems good. 3 units of Scout Sentinel. So we have 1 big unit. These guys usually you play more aggressively because you can reinforcements them back to life. And because they reinforcement as an identical unit, they come back with their Hunter Killer Missiles re-equipped. At least sometimes they do. Some places rule that doesn't happen because they're identical to the current datasheet, not identical to the initial datasheet that you added to your army. But the intention, I think, is that they come back with all their weapons. And then you have 2 smaller individual Scout Sentinels to run around the sides, and those guys will generally try to spot for the artillery, so they're going to give you Ignore, Indirect, and reroll once to hit. Yeah. So pretty straightforward. 1 big unit of Death Corps to take up the middle. Trying to make them as hard as possible. We're going to put the Primera Psyker into the unit to give them a 4+ invulnerable save. And they also have a 5+ Feel No Pain. I don't think we don't have a command squad to attach into them, so they're just going to be the 21 models, which is fine usually. The command squad gives you +1 blast against them, so it's actually not that good. And then those guys can continuously be reinforced as well, obviously. Now, I think the open question is that some places also rule that you can use Ursula Creed's free strat on reinforcements, so that you can free reinforce one of these units after it's destroyed, which isn't, I don't believe technically the rules, but it is kind of open to interpretation because removal from the battlefield and destroyed are like simultaneous. They're part of the same effect. Being destroyed also removes you from the battlefield at the same time. So whether or not they're actually there for Ursula Creed to affect them with their aura is kind of open to interpretation. But I don't think it usually it rules that they don't. But if you do, then you could potentially reinforce the Kriegsmen and the big unit of Scout Sentinels at the same time, which is cool. When do I think we'll actually see cars for the new Tyranids? I would say probably within the next 2 weeks, for sure. I would say probably like shortly before September or maybe during September. I think things usually come out like through weekend, right? So we'll probably start to see them early September, I imagine. Cool beans, chat. So that's some Astra Militarum, and we also saw a little bit of Astra Militarum in War Master, I think, towards the top as well. Oh, maybe I lied to you. Maybe I was looking at Custodes. But we have, I mean, we talked about some Astra Militarum from WTC. So they've certainly been seeing a lot more play there. They're definitely, I think, up and coming within the metagame. Yeah. Oh, here we go. It's from. Excuse me. It was from Texas Open. So this was a major event. 111 players, I think, was the total number. We did see an X and 1 Astra Militarum, which looks very similar. This one has a command squad and a regimental engine seer, Cadian shock troopers, 1 unit of Death Corps Krieg. Those are all 10s. 2 chimeras to carry them around, 2 hellhounds. So the benefit here from the hellhounds, if they also take scout sentinels, which we didn't. This one has a storm sword. Whoa! We're running a super heavy. That's cool. I think that the technology that I've been told, and I don't know if I've experienced this personally, but if you play player plays terrain, the super heavy guard tanks are actually much better because it's tougher to body block them or prevent them from shooting. That's usually the technology if you're on like US Open layouts or something where the tanks are so physically large that they usually have to cross like huge amounts of space in order to actually get lines of sight to things. And you can create avenues where there's no way they can get line of sight. And then if you're fast, you can just run stuff into those areas where the Storm Sword would need to go to shoot. And so you can, if it doesn't like get big charges in or something, you can perpetually body block it in if you have enough models and stop them from shooting for like a large portion of the game. But if you're on player plays terrain or some lighter terrain formats, the big super heavies can really take over the middle of the table. But this is a incredibly tough, hardy list here because we have a Rogal Nord and a Storm Sword, Tempestus Scions and a Calidus Assassin as utility, and a bunch of chimeras. Real Armored Company feel. It's pretty cool. Oh, Inky's back. Hi, kitty. Wow. Are you being weird? Okay. Okay. The next thing that I want to talk about is Chaos Space Marines. So over at the War Master GT, the pre-WTC Super Major, we had the one non-Eldar player in the top cut, Alexandra Sacco, playing Chaos Space Marines. And we also saw some Chaos Space Marine, some huge Chaos Space Marine wins from other events. So, yeah, we've got Abadabadubadon in this one, plus 2 Chaos Lords. Holy crap. What does a Chaos Lord even do? I don't know if I've ever seen a regular Chaos Lord be played. Do they give you Rites of Battle? Let's go find that guy. Here he is. He does give you Rites of Battle. Okay, cool. Plus, he also gets +1 strength, attacks, and armor penetration characteristic. What does he have on himself? A demon hammer. Okay, whoa. All right, so these guys have like a thunder hammer? Yeah. So he goes to 6 attack, strength 9, AP 3, 3 damage. Sick. That's pretty solid. Once per game, plus they get a free strat. That actually seems pretty solid for 75 points. Yeah, okay. All right. Cypher as a little lone operative with a bunch of pistol shots. 2 units of cultists. The Chaos Cultists actually have objectives secured, so they're pretty useful. 1 Chaos Rhino. Big unit or regular size unit of Chosen. 2 small units of Chosen. I imagine that is where the Chaos Lords attach into. And they're all undivided, so they can use the full reroll stratagem as well, which certainly helps if you have a 3 damage devastating wound weapon in your unit. 3 Forge Fiends, double Nurgle, so these guys are targetable for Dark Obscuration for the untargetability, plus a Forge Fiend and Undivided, so it also gets the full reroll stratagem. Sometimes you see this guy come out of Strategic Reserve, so the Nurgle ones are really tough to engage with because you can make one of them unshootable. And then the other one can just pop out and immediately drop the Undivided strat as soon as it does so. Looks like a unit of Possessed. These guys are just good for like kind of a counterpunch. They get devastating wounds when they perform a Dark Pact. So again, you can put full rerolls on them, and you can fish for devastating wounds. And they have 2 damage melee weapons, so you can usually, if you're rerolling enough, and you also get sustained hits and stuff, then you can push yourself out like 12 or 14 mortals, I think, if you're just fishing for 6s. But you don't necessarily need to because their stats are pretty high normally. They're just a little squishy, but they're cheap for 145. And then obviously, like a lot of the stuff is just sort of baked around the really powerful stratagems that Chaos Space Marines have, which I think is probably the biggest benefit that the faction has, in my opinion. The big unit of Obliterators for rerolls, so they'll come down and pop indirect fire, shoot you through walls, and then also full reroll themselves. And the Changeling as another lone operative. I'm so interested. So the interesting thing about the Changeling is that he kind of slaps, right? He's got an overchargeable flamethrower. It shoots for like strength 6 D3 damage. But he's not as fast as the Blue Scribes of Tzeentch, and he's more expensive. And those Blue Scribes of Tzeentch, man, I'm telling you, that's some undiscovered technology. So Alexander Sacco. Is his name Sacco? What did they put it in as? Alexander. All right. I assume Alexander's the number 1. Maybe that's just the WTC list formatting. Congratulations on being the only honorable player to get into the top 4 cut of War Master GT. And I think we're definitely seeing more and more, and especially with the number of Chaos Space Marine players that were submitted for WTC, just because it's basically another artillery faction with the amount of like super powerful shooting it has between Obliterators and Forge Fiends and Obliterators shooting through walls. They're like a real contender right now. But we also saw in Hammer of Wrath GT, this one I keep bringing up. This is another one with a cool meta. What did we see the other one? The like Ballroom Brawl or something was last week that just had the coolest metagame. This is another one with the coolest metagame. Eldari all got beaten out. Get out of here. We got Adeptus Mechanicus and Tau Empire in like the top 8. And the number 1 and number 2 were both Chaos Space Marines. So Arthur 2 over here. Playing a Chaos Lord, Cypher, double Dark Communes, and a Master of Possession. So we're going to be seeing some Accursed Cultists today. Triple Chaos Rhinos. Yeah, there's the double Accursed Cultists. So this unit is like kind of nuts, honestly. If you haven't played against the Accursed Cultists yet, it sort of flew under the radar for a while. There's a player over on my server who plays like nothing but Accursed Cultists, or did for a while, and so we kind of got exposed to them pretty early. Now, it is an expensive unit. I think the whole thing is about 250 points once you add the commune, but the commune is crazy. They give the entire unit a 5+ invulnerable save. They also get a once per game advance and charge, +1 to hit and +1 to wound. So you can push out like a really reasonable threat out of these guys. It's not like crazy, right? Because they're only move 6 infantry. But because the Accursed Cultists constantly regenerate models, they regenerate every command phase like a Spirit Seer used to. You can, if you don't shoot them down really far, they'll regenerate 3 wounds per command phase. So either 3 individual little cultists or 1 big torment. And the torment's like an 1.5-inch base plus a 2-inch coherency off of a model that already exists. So you can put it like 3.5 inches farther forward, then also trigger your advance and charge in your command phase, and then push the unit super far. So that in and of itself can be like plus 7 or 8 inches on threat range if you've killed a model out of the unit already. And then they just slap really hard with +1 to hit and wound. So plus the entire unit has a feel no pain. They're like these huge bricks. They have a baked in invulnerable save. It's just killing them is like it's such a morass. And if you don't kill them and they just like throw a bunch of strats on them, they just hit really hard. It's a super strong front line. They will die eventually, especially if you commit super hard into them. But it's tough to commit enough into them to kill them without overcommitting and getting killed by the other stuff. They're just that efficient. 2 huge units of Chosen. All right, sick. Plus 2 Noise Marine squads and an Obliterator squad. And we have a Chaos Lord for the Chosen. Yeah, one of the Chosen units gets a Lord in there. So no Forge Fiends today, I think. We're just playing melee stuff for the most part. Yeah, Noise Marines for like dudes with good Blastmasters, and then Obliterators for backline guns, yeah. But no Forge Fiends, we're just doing melee for the most part. Any bugs in the top cut? There's a couple. Yeah, there's some Space Marines. Or some Tyranids. I don't think that any Tyranids were undefeated this week. At least in larger events. Yeah, no undefeated Tyranids right now. As far as I can see. But Tyranids did fine. I mean, Tyranids are like the perennial Xen ones. So this other one we had was 4-0-1 from James Carmona. This one was ringing Abaddon, the Dark Communes again, double Accursed Cultist, big Terminator squad, or a medium-sized Terminator squad for Abaddon, so only 5 models this time around. Not going all in on the big, huge squad, which honestly, I don't feel like you need, because Abaddon, that squad's so large that it oftentimes gets in its own way, and it can't, like, move efficiently, because it's Abaddon's on a 50 mil base, I think, and then 10 models, he might even be a 60, and then 10 models on 40s. And so it actually gets into this position where like it can't hide from things because it's so wide, and it like starts to not be unable to move around itself because it just has its bases are in its own way. So I actually think the little 5-mans are pretty fine because all they are for the most part is a delivery system for Abaddon. And some lists, as we're seeing more and more of, they just axe the Terminators entirely. They're like, I don't even need these guys. I'm only going to take Abaddon himself. We then have an Forge Fiend. Undivided Forge Fiend for the fire support. 1 Hellbrute. Ooh, that's cute. So you can double up on your Dark Pact abilities. And he actually sort of wombo combos with the Forge Fiend because he lets the Forge Fiend get both sustain and lethal hits on its guns. And then when it's just fishing for both rolls, it's just fine with getting either of them. And then the Changeling. Double Obliterator as well. So much more shooty-oriented version. A lot less like forward pressure, which does score worse, obviously, than the just all melee all the time build, but has I think probably a bigger swath of good matchups. You don't run into these issues with your opponents. Like Text for Genestealer Cult and just peels 40 Cursed Cultists off the table immediately, and you're like, oh, sad. We can talk about these Tyranids over here if we want to. I think that's all the Chaos Space Marines I have to talk about. This one is pretty classic. Synaptic Linchpin Hive Tyrant. So he goes to a 9-inch Synapse Aura. I wonder if we're running like a bunch of hordes today with that model in there. 15 Barb Gaunts, triple Biovore, double Exocrine. Oh, we're running Tyrannofexes, I see. A Neurogaunt unit, 1 Lictor, so 2 Acid Spray Tyrannofexes to take the middle, a unit of Tyrant Guard, to attach to the Hive Tyrant, I imagine. And then triple Zoanthropes, as you do, because Zoanthropes are great. Interestingly, I guess the Synaptic Linchpin is probably just extra points, right? Yeah, because this is exactly 1,000. So if there's 10 points left, you might as well buy it, but especially with Neurogaunts and Zoanthropes, most of your army's in Synapse anyway. You don't necessarily need that extra 3 inches, but if it's a free upgrade, it's a free upgrade. Who cares? 15 Barb Gaunts is interesting. I think maybe we were maybe we were prepared a little bit for this this metagame here. We're seeing a bunch of Chaos Space Marines. We're seeing Necrons in the top. We're seeing Thousand Suns. The thing with the Barbgons is that they can go in and they can suppress a unit to prevent them from moving, or to slow them down. But they're basically like 5 Space Marine scouts, so they'll just get shot to death and die afterwards. So if you want to continue suppressing that unit, you just have to keep sending Barbgons at whatever you need, whatever is attacking you. And you can kind of throw them pretty far because you can string them to the Hive Tyrant and then have the Hive have the unit string out, and then all you need to do is shoot 1 or 2 models at whatever you're shooting at to ensure that you get your suppression off. And then you can keep like a Lich Guard brick or a big Custodian brick or something kind of slowed down for long enough that you can deal with the other stuff around, and then you can just like focus every single Zoanthrope on it and hopefully kill it in one go. No Pyrovores in this list, I don't think, which does feel like a little bit of a downside, but we do have the Tyrannofexes and stuff, hopefully like kind of encourage people to get out of cover, because they can just sit out in the middle of the table for the most part and just kind of chill. Seems fine. Kind of normal Tyranid things that we've been seeing. I do think, as much as Tyranids, I think, would be able to survive the Biovores getting nerfed, I do think that they would be hurt pretty hard if you nerfed Zoanthropes. Because they lack the real heavy hitters. The faction's like really pillow-fisted for the most part. It's really reliant on getting sustain or lethal hits on infantry or vehicles. But if you don't have those unit types, or you just have like really efficient defensive stats, then they have a tough time getting through you. And the Zoanthropes are the one unit that's just laser beam a ton of damage onto somebody. So if Zoanthropes got like nerfed into the dirt and went to like 45 points or something, I think that could be disastrous for the army. They could maybe like pivot and play like Hierodules or more melee stuff, but it would be unfortunate. Their armor cracking would suffer. Any Chaos Demons? Chaos Space Marines seem really fair. Well, I don't know about fair. They are playing like I think they used to play like a kind of a fair game of 40k where they were like, all right, everyone, we're gonna have a big battle in the middle of the table and we will see who defeats the other. But now they're like untargetability, indirect fire, like mortal wound spam. So they kind of they play the fairest out of all of the cheaty factions probably. But they're definitely like leaning closer and closer towards like a bunch of Genestealer cult mechanics, you know. Where there's like there's all these like uninteractable units like jumping around the table, like blasting you. It's not quite as bad as some factions, but it's definitely they're trying to abuse the uninteractable units in their codex, which is what you should do. And clearly it's working for them. But their units aren't efficient enough. Like all of those units that they're talking about are like 200 or 400 points. So it's definitely not to the point where they are just blasting you off the table with math. They do have to actually play a game, unlike Eldar or some other factions. All right, ask about Chaos Demons. We can take a look at the Chaos Demons. I don't have any World Eaters for you, chat. We could search for World Eaters, but I think it would be largely kind of a fruitless endeavor. All right, the War Master had some Chaos Demons, I believe, towards the top here. Let's take a quick look. Yep, X and 1 Chaos Demons from Gonzalo Raven over here. Team Spain. Wow, this is such a classic list. Okay, I love it. So we have Be'lakor, a Argath King of Blades Bloodthirster with the Great Axe, a Lord of Change with the Everstave, and Shalaxi Hellbane. Perfect. All the good characters. 1 Skull Master, so that is the Juggernaut Bloodletter character. And the Changeling, 2 units of 3 Nurglings. Big unit of Blood Crushers. All right. Yeah, that gets spicy. The Blood Crushers, I see the Blood Crushers getting more and more play. They do plow for 1 billion mortal wounds when they charge. And they benefit from the rerolls off it's +1 to hit? I think it's +1 to hit off of the Bloodthirster. So if you are dropping them at the same time in the same place, you can actually sort of wombo combo them together. Yeah, just plus 1 to hit from the Bloodthirster, right? Double check here, just so I'm not presenting misinformation. It is plus 1 to hit, yep. So they can go to hitting on 2s. With a bunch of attacks, because they have a Juggernaut. And I think the Juggernaut's base hit on 4s, so they go down to 3s. 2 or 3 units of 3 Flamers for utility, and that's it. Simple, but effective. Yeah, that seems solid. I wonder if there's like a universe where you just continue denizing of the warp, the blood, the Skull Crusher, the Blood Crusher unit. Let's look at these guys real quick. So the Skullmaster gives devastating wounds to the bladed horns and the Juggernauts. Plus he forces people to take Battle Shock, which is cute, I guess, but it stops them from interrupting. But only if you are actually, if you actually fail it. But you can force you can't force a penalty on it. You can just force additional Battle Shock with Bellicor. So that's sad. I guess they get -1 if they're in Shadow, right? Yeah. Okay. So you can give them -1, and then you can potentially do D3 mortals with the Skull Master if he flexibly does his thing. And because the interesting thing about Shadow of Chaos is because it's checked every single phase, you can flip Shadow of Chaos in your movement or shooting phases, and then charge in to ensure that the mid board or whatever area of the table the Skull Crushers are charging is in Shadow of Chaos, and then they have a greater chance of taking damage. And then that's extra D3 mortal wounds. Like, the reason that that's relevant, I think, is that that's extra D3 mortal wounds on top of the Blood Crusher attacks. So the Blood Crushers then, when they end their charge move, which is the same timing as the Skullmaster, it is... I have too many tabs open now. Yeah, it is the same timing as the Skullmaster, so that's cute. I guess you could also potentially like prevent like mortal wound protection. There's not a lot of reactive mortal wound protection in the game though. That requires you not to be battle shocked. I don't think there's any actually. Now I'm coming to think of it. All the old Armor of Contempt effects are gone. But then that's simultaneous with the Blood Crusher Stampede. So then they roll 7 dice on a 4-up. You would take D3s on each. So you could spike someone for... I guess the average then becomes like 7 mortal wounds. Because it's like 3.5 times 2. But you can also... You could spike up to like 10 or so. And 7 mortal wounds is enough that the profiles of these guys probably kill you. Especially because they get devastating wounds on their horns. So that's actually like probably a hammer. You can pretty reliably like chunk through a vehicle with that unit if you get lucky. And if they fail their battle shock, then they're taking like 10 mortal wounds, 9 or 10 mortal wounds, pretty reliably. It's just expensive, right? The whole unit is like $350. How much are you? We got 105 from the Skullmaster. And 6 Blood Crushers. So that's 240. Yeah, so 345. So, I don't know. That actually seems pretty solid. I like aggressive demon units that aren't just like bouncy guys. All right, chat. What are we on for time? 1:32. All right. Let's do some list reviews. Sean, I see you. Ryan sent me the list.
List review for you. More importantly, interested in Monster Mash and wondered where you landed on 6 monsters with Chongling only or 5 with some units or more towards 3 with all the support units.
I'll take a look. Yeah, so if you're on Discord, you can PM it to me. Oh, it looks like you did. Nice. I think I've got it. We might have to muddle our way through this one because it looks like it formatted weird, but that's okay. Ryan also already took a quick posted a list and super chatted a while ago. So we'll talk about Ryan's list first. Before we wrap things up, we'll just do a couple list reviews. And if anybody wants to jump in towards the end here, then feel free. All right. So I'm going to dive into the Mechanicus book here. So I'm not... I don't know if I've tried my hand at Mechanicus list building quite yet. So I'll have to remind myself what all these abilities are. Specifically the enhancements. So we have a Skitarii Marshal with Purge Protocols. So he can flip the imperative you have active for the unit, for his unit, or for one unit within 12. Okay, so that's useful. Specifically Skitarii, but that's who gets the abilities anyway. And then another Skitarii Marshal that grants sustained hits 1 to his own unit. Third Skitarii Marshal, and then double Dominus. One of them gives stealth with his enhancement. So the Marshals themselves, go find their datasheet real quick. So the Marshals themselves get double use of a stratagem on their own unit, but it's not free, which is sad. I guess the cool thing that you could do is potentially react to fire with multiple units, but it's not that great on the Skitarii because they're very small. I guess you could Bulwark Imperative multiple units because that requires you to be Skitarii, and you could give more than one thing a 4+ invulnerable save, so that's pretty sweet. You can make multiple things. Oh no, that's only fight phase. Could give multiple things an advance and charge. Yeah, not charging that often with friendly Skitarii guys. And you can give +1 to wound versus non-vehicles, which is also pretty sweet. The downside is it doesn't actually discount you, I think. Then you get reroll hits on all your guns, which is super solid. Now, I think the problem with this Skitarii Marshal, if I were to criticize this man, is that the units that he joins are really crappy. They're not really units that you want to get a ton of work out of, but we'll see what the list is bringing. We have double Dominus. So we're going to pull that guy's data sheet up real quick. So these guys are going to the Cataphrons. They give a 5+ feel no pain. I assume we're putting them in breacher teams, I would hope. And then they can blow up enemy vehicle units.
Could you take a look at my walls? On Discord.
Yep, I'll take a look once we get through the queue here. All right. So what are we attaching to? We have 3 units of Skitarii Rangers with galvanic rifles. Plus full grade Electro Priests, a big unit of Iron Star to Balistari, Cataphron Breachers, Cerberus Raiders, Cerberators, 2 Scorpius Disintegrators with Belarus Energy. So those are indirect fire. Indirect fire is always nice to have, but the Scorpius Disintegrators do have a little bit of trouble with it. But you can give them heavy keyword, and then they can at least sort of shoot through the downside. 195 for the Disintegrators is a lot, though. Plus a big unit of Skitarii and Rust Stalkers. Now, are the Rust Stalkers the guys with... They get... One of them gets lethal hits? Is that what they do? I forget which weapon keywords they put on the melee weapons in these guys, because they used to do just 1,000 mortal wounds. And then I think they nerfed them pretty good. Oh, no, they have devastating. Okay. So the Rust Stalkers are at least... They get Transonic Blades and Cord Claw on the Princeps. Yeah, so they all have devastating wounds. Okay. And then the... Can they get... Okay, so they all have Transonic Razors. So they start with 3 attacks and 8i3 with... Oh, no devastating. Okay, so they have to pick between anti-infantry and devastating, and the Princeps gets both. Okay, cool. So 4 attacks each with devastating wounds is actually like kind of a lot, right? Because you're swinging 40 times. Weapon skill 4 sucks, but it's not. It is what it is. You're just like hoping that you clip somebody for like 7 or 8 mortals, which is a little bit unlikely, but it's not the end of the world. At least you can advance and charge, and they go super fast and only 150 points. So a little bit of a kind of a late game closer, which I don't hate. So that seems pretty solid. Servitors are a good utility unit. Cerberus Raiders, same deal. Love the big Cataphront Breacher unit. I'm not as jazzed about the Fulgurite Electro Priest. I know they're like kind of a cool. They're kind of a cool like boat for the Tech Priest to. Where's the Fulgurite guys? For the Tech Priest to join into, right? Because they get the Bodyguard ability. But their base profile is really bad. So you're stacking like defensive abilities onto this unit that's going to die anyway. So they're just T3 with a 5+ invuln. They get -1 to be wounded. So most things wound them on 3s or 4s, right? Like T3, you're looking at like a lot of the game being strength 6 right now. So you're 3s or 4s, only 1 wound apiece, and you get a 4+ feel no pain if you have the manip or the Dominus join you. But that basically means that they have like kind of a 3+ save and a bunch of like sort of like T4, T5-ish guys with just a 3+ save and 1 wound doesn't really save them. Plus, like the other thing you think about is like, what are you protecting? Well, I'm protecting this unit that has 20 total attacks, which doesn't like really get that many buffs. So I'm like super not a fan of the Fulgurite Electro Priest if I were to pick one thing out of this list that I didn't love. So that's like that total package is like what, 100 and like you could give them stealth, I guess, but it's 175 points or 260 points, excuse me, for this really bad melee unit that's just kind of hard to kill sometimes. I don't love those guys. I would probably cut those. I think, like I said, Cataphront Breachers are kind of like the name of the game. So if you could squeeze more Cataphront Breachers in, that's where I would be looking. I think the rest of the list looks pretty solid. The Rangers Scout move, right? Which does give you a little bit of forward operation. Yeah, they have a 6-inch scout move. I would like to see, I think, the Skitari, the Vanguard in a transport, maybe. And I don't know if you need characters on all of these. You'll actually find that units like the Skitari they're always in the line of fire, and a lot of times your opponent's looking at them to try to like farm them for kills. So a unit of 10 like T3 guys with a character in them on an objective means that if your opponent's trying to get overwhelming force, all they have to do is kill that unit and they've maxed it. Or if they're trying to get no prisoners, they kill that unit, they get 4 points. Or if they're trying to get assassinate, they just kill that unit and then they get it. So you'll find that these units are actually like more effective or more efficient for you if they don't have the marshals in them. So I could see a marshal on like 1 if that's the unit you're using to trigger battle line and you want to do some shooting with them. So I like that. And the enhancement to like switch things into different protocols is kind of cute. So I like that too. I would maybe cut 2 though. 3 is like more than I think I would ever need. And that's another 125 points. If you cut these guys, you basically have another unit of breachers into the list, and you could put the Dominus in the second breacher team, and suddenly you have this really strong backline of shooting. I think that's what I would do if I were to make some quick changes to it. Obviously, breachers are like tough to acquire though, so it might also be a model availability thing, which I could totally understand. But I think that's the direction I would go in. But yeah, generally speaking, I mean, like all this stuff, I don't know if it's like hyper optimal, but it's pretty good. Just like having Valorous energy cannons and Ferromite in the back line is pretty solid. It just gives you a little bit more shooting. And having indirect fire at all sometimes keeps people honest. They have to start putting their utility units into reserve or something, and that suddenly makes things a little bit awkward for them. All right. Hope that helped, Ryan. Gets +1 to hit if shooting infantry. It's I guess that's not too bad, right? Because then it can go down to 3s if you're in Protector Imperative, right? Because it gets heavy, so it can remain stationary, get +1, get -1 for shooting indirect, but +1 if it shoots infantry. So that's actually pretty good. I like that. All right. Sean sent me a list. I got your list here, Sean. All right. Let's talk about some frickin' demons, dude. Oh, you reformatted for me. Well, thank you. That's very nice of you. All right, here we are on the pasty bins. So this one is rocking some demons. We got Be'lakor, the Argath King of Blades, Bloodthirster. Love that man. A Guo with Endless Gifts. Guo has actually been seeing a lot of play recently, so it's not too bad. +1 Lord of Change, plus the Shalaxi, plus the Changeling. 1 unit of Nurglings, 1 unit of Pinks, 2 units of Flamers. So I think I don't think the monster mash in demons is particularly isn't bad, honestly. What you have to be prepared to do is not actually like get that much work done with them, which feels a little bit weird. You're kind of playing Be'lakor as this like caddy for a bunch of like sort of big OC idiots, and then using Denizens of the Warp to like hop them around the table, or the redeploy strat to hop them around the table a lot, because you do have to kind of make up for the fact that you don't have a lot of support infantry. You just have the like changeling and then these 4 guys, bases, right? So as long as you're prepared to use like the lock-in stratagem, where you lock in your objective, you obsec your objectives at the start of a command phase. One thing that you can do that's really cute actually is you can throw in, not the Nurglings because they don't hold objectives, but you can throw in a little unit. You can hold the objective, and even if you're outside Be'lakor's aura, at the start of your opponent's command phase, you can use the stratagem to lock in the objective on your control, and then they shoot you to death, but the objective's still yours. That's actually really, really cute. So that kind of can make up for the fact that you don't have a lot of like board presence. But yeah, then other than that, I think the rest is pretty solid. There is an archetype right now for demons that just rocks a bunch of the graders that have feel no pains, and then just basically tries to keep them going as long as possible. So like the Guo and Shalaxi are good examples of that, and some people run like multiple keepers, just to have like a billion million wounds with a 5+ or a 4+ or more. Feel no pain, and I think that's pretty solid. I don't know if I have too much to say about this one, to be honest. That was probably a little bit disappointing. Like the Guo, I guess, is the spiciest include, and there's a universe where you cut him and you get some points back if you take Kairos Fate Weaver. But I think that just gives you like more shooting, so you can play like a standoffish game if you really want to. You can keep the Bloodthirster and Shalaxi, or I mean, you don't even have to keep Shalaxi in reserve because she's fast. But you could keep the Bloodthirster in reserve and just like shoot people with 2 Lords of Change every turn, before your opponent like commits into you, and then you pop the Bloodthirster on them. But I think that the Great Unclean One, as this is like this big idiot that can sort of waddle forward and take middle objectives, is just fine as well. Now, does he have? One of them has an anti-OC aura, right? I think, is that Rodigus? Let me put myself back up on all of this Great Unclean One technology. Oh, he's got a -1 toughness aura, or -1 toughness ability. That actually, it's end of your movement phase. Like that kind of wombo combos with the Lord of Change pretty well, actually. Because he increases his own strength and he can reduce people's toughness. So he can start shooting at like T12 vehicles and still win them on 3s. All right, Guo. You're growing on me. I understand. He gives a 6+ feel no pain. That's his aura, but that's not very, very useful in this particular list. Yeah, I think the Great Unclean One is probably pretty solid, honestly. So I think that in my experience, having played a couple Chaos Demon lists, I think that the 4 Chaos Demon lists, the 4 like greater lists where you're like Be'lakor, Bloodthirster, Shalaxi, like Lord of Change, I think that's actually a little bit light on the ground. If you go 5, you have like a ton of damage, and if you go 3, you have a ton of like board presence because you have a lot more smaller units. And I feel like one of those is probably the happy medium between the two. The fours have felt like you lose 2 graders at that point, and you like really feel it. Whereas if you have 5 graders like this one, and the Guo goes down and like Shalaxi goes down, you still have like so much damage left in the chamber to like push through the middle. But if you like didn't have, you know, one of those two, and suddenly you were down to like Bellicor and the Lord of Change, you don't really have as much to come back on. Like those two by themselves don't really carry the game, but 3 of them will. And I actually think that it's like I like 5 and I like 3, but I don't know if I like 4. So this stuff definitely feels like the place to be. I guess the one... Yeah, I don't know. I don't really have much to say about it. I actually think this list is pretty solid. Oh, I know what the enhancement does, chat. That's why, yeah. That's why I included it with the if you want to skew Feel No Pains, that's where the Guo goes. Yeah. That man's tough. I didn't remember what his psychic ability did. That was all I forgot. Would I cut the Great Unclean One before the Bloodthirster? I think so, but only because like the Bloodthirster's like is just the embodiment of like the best defense is a good offense, right? Like he doesn't. Like, he dies to shooting, but he's never going to shoot before he sinks into something, and he'll, like, blow up whatever he attacks. So the Bloodthirster just trades for something, and, like, worst-case scenario and best-case scenario gets you, like, a ton of value. The Great Unclean One just sort of waddles around and forces your opponent to sink attacks into it. I think the one downside, if there is a downside to the Great Unclean One, it gives your opponent something to shoot at that's, like, a little bit easier and less threatening than the other greater demons. Like, a lot of times what you'll find is that Bellicor is... I'm sure you know this if you play demons at all, right? On turn 1, Bellicor keeps your army safe because your opponent doesn't want to push super far forward. But on turn 2, like, you're threatening deep strikes on them anyway, so they can't really hide from you anymore. And unless Bellicor wants to die, which he will, like, that man falls apart super fast. He's behind the graders, like he's behind the Great Unclean One, projecting his aura, which means that enemy units can be like 30 inches away from Bellicor and shoot the Great Unclean One if the Great Unclean One's in the front. So the Great Unclean One's just like sort of there, right? He's just this big guy and he's got 1,000,000 wounds. So the fact that he's hard to kill is necessary because he's just going to eat damage more so than the other demons. And you could teleport him in, and that's probably fine. But I think you start to like run out of real estate. Like the benefit of him is that he doesn't necessarily need Bellicor's aura. So if you're trying to bring him in next to Bellicor, you have a little bit of a tough time. I guess you could 3-inch deep strike him on, but then that feels like a lot of work to deliver this dude who should deliver himself for the most part. So yeah, I think this list is actually pretty good. I also appreciate that it has one of each faction, right? It's like equal opportunity, real like Shadow of Disciples of Shadow, right? Is there remaining points? You're at exactly 2,000. Yeah, nice. You could cut the pinks for like double flesh horns, I guess, but the pinks are so resilient that it doesn't feel really worth it. The one downside I think I could see is if you run into a situation where you have to hold midboard objectives on the first turn. And like, the flamers aren't quite fast enough. The Nurglings can't hold objectives. So if you get like secure no man's land on turn 1, you're just like, well, you can usually run to one of them. And then you're like hoping the flamers roll high, I guess. But if you have a move 12 base unit, then you can get there. So if you cut flamers for blue scribes, that can help. Or if you took flesh hounds, that can also help. But yeah, it gets a trade-off, right? Because the blue scribes don't hit, they don't punch anyone to death. They just do like a little bit of mortal wound sometimes. And they don't have very good OC, but they are good at scoring secondaries really well. So it's I think it's like a even swap. Oh, there are 5 points left. So you could cut a flamer for flesh hounds. I would maybe think about that. Right, because flesh hounds are 70. Yeah, they're 14 points model. That just gives you a really fast unit that can string across the middle of the table and turn 1 if you need it. So they can deploy, because they're beasts, they can go through walls. So you can deploy behind a ruin on the line, and then if you pull a really bad secondary turn 1, then you can just like trade them to score it. And if you don't, then like anytime you're just putting units in deep strike, you could just force them in deep strike at one point and then drop them somewhere anyway. And they still have a flamethrower randomly, so they're like 1/3 of the output of a flamer unit just by themselves, like shooting. And they're higher OC because they are more models. It's not as good at clearing infantry for sure, but they also fight better. Sometimes that's something. And you can if you have extra CPs like sitting around, you can warp search them, and they can actually go like kill 5 infantry or something if they need to. Your opponent's got like annoying warp spiders, someone standing somewhere, and they just go get eaten by flesh hounds. Yeah. Anyway, not much else to say there. It is cool. I like to see the Guo like show up. He has he's such a good statistical buff for the greater demons, right? Because Shalaxi has like the Pavane, which is like super high volume, but mid strength, right? Yeah, it's strength 9. I guess it's only D6. But you basically put that to like strength 10-ish, right? If you reduce toughness by 1. So depending on the profile of the target, and then you get the Lord of Change up on larger vehicles if you debuff their toughness. Because he's base strength 12 with the Everstave if you stand next to Bellicor. So then he goes to like basically 13. And then his little gun strength 11, so strength 10, so basically goes to strength 11. And those are all good breakpoints against particular vehicle profiles. So whatever you're shooting at, and then if you're strength 12, I think Bellicor's gun's only strength 6, right? So then he gets +1 to wound against strength 12 vehicles, yeah, or against toughness 12 vehicles. So it actually into like every vehicle profile in the game, the Guo like significantly improves your range output against it, and I think that's actually really good. Also himself if they're T10, right? That's a solid flamer too. Light infantry, you don't want to take objectives from him because they'll overwatch them. Cool. All right. We got some Space Wolves to look at. Zex sent over the space. Oh, no. Who sent me Space Wolves? Here we go. Sagwolf sent me Space Wolves. All right, I got you. Space Wolves. Oh, we're doing a Thunderwolf Cavalry build? Whoa. Herald Deathwolf and Canis Wolfborn. I don't know if I haven't seen too much of the character Thunderwolf, the Thunderwolf epic heroes. I think typically people are on just regular Wolf Lords with them. Because the biggest benefit is that you get, with Rites of Battle, you get potentially 2 uses of squad tactics, which you don't get out of the epic heroes. So Canis Wolfborn gives you sustain 1, and he can impact attack for 3 or D3+3 mortals, potentially. And then Herald he's just tough to kill, right? Yeah. He gets devastating wounds. That's legitimately very strong. Because it... Oh, no. It only affects the wolves, though, that they're with. And then he gets to... So he has the actual after saving throw, you change the damage characteristic to 0. He doesn't have the ablative armor ability. That's weird. It's weird that those are two different things. Yeah, so he's super tough to kill because he's a 4+ invulnerable save and blanks an attack every turn. And then he buffs all of your wolves. He himself is like kind of pillow fisted though. Like 6/2/2 is fine, I guess. Versus Canis, who gives sustain to all of your weapons. And they get sustain and lethal, right? Because the Thunderwolf battle leaders give you lethal. Yeah. So assuming that you're with a battle leader, which I assume we are. Yeah, we have a battle leader here. So one big Desolator squad, a librarian with Bolter Discipline. So I'm of the opinion that if you're attaching to the Desolator squad, it's always an apothecary. The 4+ armor save on the librarian seems really good, or the 4+ invulnerable save. It seems really good, but it's only good for the times where the Desolators have already exposed themselves and are no longer like out of line of sight and cover. In which case, you don't like you've already gotten your work out of them, and if like the game's not over at that point, then it's going poorly, I think. So if you consider most of the artillery in the game is either AP 0, 1, or 2. If it has devastating wounds, so like Night Spinners, it doesn't matter what your invulnerable save is because he doesn't protect you against it. If you are if it's AP 1, then you're on a 3-up. If it's AP 2, you're on a 4-up anyway. It's not super common that you see like AP 3 or AP 2 ignore cover indirect fire. It certainly happens. Like enemy Desolators have the Venger Launcher, which is AP 2 ignore cover. But like 90% of the indirect fire in the game, which is what you're worried about shooting at them, doesn't care about the ability. And even if it does, the Apothecary also still keeps you resilient, because if they can't kill the entire unit, the Apothecary will start regenerating them. So I'm like always of the opinion that it's Apothecary in here. I don't love the Librarian, honestly. For the Desolator squad, 2 Gladiator Lancers, pretty classic. 2 Stout Snipers, also classic. 3 Thunderwolf Cavalry. Whoa! Triple Thunderwolf Cavalry and a Whirlwind. I'm a level with you. I think 3 Thunderwolf Cavalry might be too many Thunderwolf Cavalry, if I'm to be honest. I think you need Inceptors probably is the one downside. So like as these Thunderwolf Cavalry are running up the table, they're not great at grabbing objectives and doing stuff. So I think that you want to cut one of these for 6 Inceptors. That would be my opinion. I don't know how to feel about the Thunderwolf characters. How do they compare with the regular Wolf Lords in terms of points? They are cheaper, actually, which is pretty interesting. I don't know if I love Herald. Canis seems okay, because he's already got Lightning Claws, right? So he's got, like, baked-in rerolls. Although they're only 1 damage Lightning Claws. And he buffs his unit. I think, I don't know. Having the double, or at least 1... Cav unit, or at least 1 regular Wolf Lord gives you so much flexibility, because then if you have the 2 units like running up on your opponent, you can, whichever one they target first, if you have the 2 Wolf Lords, then you get the 2 stratagems for free, which is great. Or you don't get 2 stratagems, you get to use both stratagems regardless of who they target first. If you only have one of them, then at least you can double up on one of the stratagems sometimes if you force them to attack like Canis' squad first. The stratagem usage is just like much cleaner with regular Wolf Lords, and I don't think you're just losing the unique buff, but you also make them significantly faster, and I think that's ultimately like the problem with with Thunderwolves is like it's all about delivery. So I think I would swap them for Wolf Lords. It's like less fun and cool, but there's just they have so many benefits. They don't hit as hard. They don't make the unit hit as hard because they don't have buffs for them, but I don't know if you necessarily need that, because like a Wolf Guard unit, or a Wolf Lord unit, or a Thunderwolf unit charging somebody with Oath on it is probably just going to kill them. Like, there's not many units besides like Big Knights and stuff that survive. And even against those, the dude with the Thunder Hammer is probably better than a guy with Lightning Claws anyway. And you don't even need Lightning Claws if you're oathing whatever you're charging. I think that would be my advice. The other thing that you could potentially do is like Rapid Ingress the second unit in, so you can force them to target the first unit first, and you always have your second units active. But you kind of want to present a united front with these guys. So like if you have a bunch of Thunderwolves and you can Armor of Contempt both of them in one turn, for example, then it like really makes it hard to kill them in one go, and then you get the maximum use out of your reactive moves and stuff. Yeah. The more I'm talking myself into it, the more I talk about it, the more it makes sense to me. $15 points extra, so you pick the Librarian as the upgrade. Yeah, it's weird because it's like I think the Librarian's better if you're like a combat unit, if you're like a frontline unit. So if it was like between the Apothecary and the Librarian for like Hell Blasters, I'm in on the Librarian every time because he's like shooting his gun. He's like, you know, they're jumping out of a transport, they're getting shot at. He's shooting, they're shooting back, and like making the unit just like 10% harder to kill is super good. The problem is that you're paying extra points for, or you're kind of like, it's like an opportunity cost, right? In the one situation of Desolators, the reanimated, adding a bodyguard model back to the unit is like a slightly better defensive benefit than having a 4+ invulnerable save. And so the trade-off is that you have a smite and a cool melee weapon, but Desolators are rarely in range to use a smite or a cool melee weapon, so you don't really need those benefits. So yeah, that's just been my experience. I've been, every time I haven't taken like the Apothecary on the Desolators, I feel it really bad, because then like one dude gets picked off by a mortar and I'm just like, fuck. That was like they were saving on 3s anyway or whatever, or just got devastating wounded or mortal wounded, or like a tank exploded next to them and the Apothecary just fixes that, and the Librarian's just like, well, I don't know what to do, boss. Cut the Librarian down for Wolf Lords? Yeah, that's what I would do. I like that. The big benefit is that is that you just get rights of battle on both units, right? So if you're putting both units in the middle of the table and your opponent's like trying to jank you out, both of them can Adaptive Tactics. Or if your opponent's really just like pushing super hard, both of them can Armor of Contempt. So there's never a situation where your opponent's like, oh, I'll just target this unit down. Like I'll force the Armor of Contempt out of one unit, shoot the other unit, and kill most of it. Where like you always have that ability available to you. You also could get potentially like, you know, you could potentially double Honor the Chapter, so they both get +1 to wound. You could potentially double up Adapt Strategies. So like you've already chosen the Assault Doctrine, you could Assault Doctrine both of them again the next turn. It's just, yeah, I don't know. It's just super duper useful. And then you get a high strength weapon in the unit as well. A lot of that advice I think I'm taking from Animander, who played them in the Invitational, which is why he played double Wolf Lord instead of the characters. All right, chat. Thank you guys for sending out the list. Big thanks to the super chats. I appreciate it, everybody. Hope everyone had an enjoyable stream this time around. A lot of Space Marine talk today, but I think we got through most of the interesting stuff. Man, there's like, I mean, if we look through these lists, right? We talked about it a little bit, but there's, I guess it wasn't so bad this week because a lot of these, like the super killers, were over at WTC. But like this shit, man. Oh, there was one event before we tune off. I'll probably talk about this. I'll do a best list in 40k breakdown of these lists. It was this one. Like, come on, man. Fucking Eldar, dude. It's the perfect 600 pointer, man, across a 6-round event. Like, come on. All right. You've probably fallen asleep while playing your games, and like your opponent can't do anything about you. You're just like, oh, Phantasm. I'll move away. I'll fate dice my saves. Oh, I didn't die. GG. Yeah. It's just, I think the larger events that we get to here, and the more that the meta kind of striates with like more skilled players, and we're better at using lists and all this stuff, the higher and higher Eldar get, and it's just it feels bad, man. They're 2 nerfs in, and they're still kind of as dominant as they were. Maybe not quite as dominant as they were on release, but it's crazy right now. It's absolutely crazy. So I'm waiting. I'm waiting for this this September FAQ, dude. It's gonna be so good after Eldar get the kick, but they freaking need it right now because this is brutal. So yeah, skipped a lot of undefeated lists here, chat, because it was a lot of Eldar. But the stuff that we got to talk about is cool. Lots of Space Marines, different Space Marine chapters. We saw Dark Angels getting played. We see Space Wolves getting played. We see Death Watch getting played. That's rad. Adeptus Mechanicus this week. That's also rad. Yeah, I mean, Tyranid's like looking pretty good. Thousand Suns. There were a couple Thousand Suns 5-0s that we didn't really talk about. Genestealer cults are significantly depowered but not dead, which is nice to see. Yeah, Thousand Suns here, 2 and 3 at Texas Open and Major. But it's just like Eldar's just messing everything up right now. So that's what it is. Anyway, I'm going to go ahead and pop off. Thanks, everyone, for joining. I'll probably call it about 45 minutes or so. I think we said about 6 p.m. or 7 p.m. U.S. Eastern Time. I have a game over on the Purple channel, so that's going to be just after, a couple minutes after this one. We'll start, and we'll do Eldar. Whoa, amazing, versus, I think we're in Space Marines that time. I'm going to be playing a game over there. Twitch.tv/TacticalTortoise. Please come hang out with me, and I'll see you then. Otherwise, thanks for watching, everybody. Remember to keep it classy, and I will see you in the next Tactical Tuesday. I also have games scheduled over on Twitch for most of the remainder of the week, so if you are interested in watching some games or watching some commentary, then please go follow me. Give me a follow over there and check me out, because we're going to be doing a lot of games over there, which will be fun. Anyway, cheers, everyone, and I'll see you over there.